Welcome to the Condo Pod, brought to you by the Canadian Condominium Institute, Eastern Ontario Chapter. This is your go-to space for all things condo in Eastern Ontario. From governance and legal updates to maintenance, management, and community living, we're diving into the topics that matter most to condo owners, directors, and professionals across our region. Let's dive in. Hey everybody, Mike Lewicki here on behalf of CCI Eastern Ontario and another special episode of the Condo Pod. So today I am here again. We're talking about our upcoming Kingston conference, and our Kingston conference is absolutely fantastic. If you were looking for the absolutely best conference to go out of any conference, out of any industry for the first half of 2026, this is the one. So it's May 29th, held in Kingston. Details on our website, on our socials. Check us out. But today we're in the studio today talking to one of our panelists for, I would probably say, one of our most exciting and anticipated sessions of our conference, which is the legal panel. Today, I am joined by Victoria Crane of Davidson, Houle, Allen. Thank you, Victoria, so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So for those who don't know, Victoria is with, like I said, Davidson, Houle, Allen, one of the top condominium firms in the province within Ontario, obviously recognized within the country as well, but within Ontario, well known. And I've known Victoria for many years through my time with CCI, seen her up on the panel, talked with her, seen her at seminars. And what we're excited about today is to kind of find out who Victoria is, what it is with the condo, world that you enjoy, what the business is, and what we're hoping to get out of this panel coming up on May 29th. So I've just got a few questions for you, Victoria, to help the kind of listeners and the viewers kind of understand a bit. So you were called to the bar in 2017. Now, for those who don't know, called to the bar essentially means at that point you can lawfully be a lawyer, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
And that is all my understanding, by the way, at that point. That's my research.
That's
where it starts and ends.
You got it.
But so 2017, you were called to the bar, became a lawyer. And then how did it go from there? You're like, you know what? I really think I want to look at rules, regulations, bylaws, and declarations.
Yes. So how did I get into condominium?
Yeah, exactly.
My articling experience was at a full-service law firm,
right?
Which means that at that law firm, the firm practices a wide array of areas of law.
Right.
And one of those areas of law was condominium law. And when I became a lawyer, I didn't intend to become a condominium lawyer. I didn't know much, if anything, about condominium law, but while articling, I got some exposure to condominium law, and I really gravitated towards that practice group because primarily of the people that were practicing. I liked the way that the lawyers practiced law, and then as I became more familiar with condominium law, I realized there's a lot to it, and it's
just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
It covers a wide range of issues. It covers, although it's a very niche area of the law, it touches on a wide array of aspects of like employment law, construction deficiency litigation, human rights. We're dealing with quite a bit.
It does, and considering how it was designed, from my layman's understanding, the Condominium Act in Ontario, which, yes, people, there is legislation, that's kind of how it works, is to allow people to live in a different type of, living arrangement. No, so to that point, like condominiums are essentially helping people to understand how to live differently than the traditional white picket fence, residential neighborhood. It's still residential living. It's still living with neighbors, just in a different way.
Yes, exactly. And so you're living within the framework that the Condominium Act sets out, as well as your declaration, bylaws, and rules. And so, of course, with that comes, having to think of the condominium community
yes.
as a whole, and not just your individual self. And so I think with condominium law, what really pulled me in is helping condominium communities function
yes.
in a healthy way.
And that's an interesting approach. I get in my day job, I get to deal with lawyers of many different disciplines, many different styles of law and different types of law. And it's interesting, and like I said, I've seen you at different events and seen you at different seminars, and you always get the questions about, well, I've got this position, I've got this issue, and you've always approached it from, well, what's the end result?
Yes.
Like we may have started here, but why did we start there? Where is the disconnect? Where are we going to in this?
Yes.
Right? And that was kind of a question I was going to ask you is, it's if you think about it, because I was making my notes. So you've almost been in condominium law for over a decade.
Yes.
Is that insane to think? Like,
It's completely insane to think.
Right?
I don't feel like it's been that long, but I guess time flies when you're having fun.
time flies and you're like, I'm just going to read these declarations and standard units, and it's fantastic.
Yes.
So between when you say started back in 2017, if you had to say to the general public, and obviously our viewers and listeners, what is the one biggest change you've seen in condominium law between then and now? There's been a number of changes of the act and all that stuff, but one that people may not realize is happening now but wasn't then.
That's a really good question. So I think when I started practicing condominium law in 2017, there were significant changes to the legislation that happened
right around that time.
At that point in time.
You came like right in when the big changes
I came
were
in
happening.
right in when the big changes, significant amendments were made to the Condominium Act. There was the introduction of the Condominium Management Services Act.
Yes,
so
that's right.
With that came, the creation of the Condominium Authority of Ontario, the first, condo administrative authority. We had the Condominium Authority Tribunal, governing condominium disputes fully online.
Right, that's right.
And so over the past 10 years, we've seen the CAT go from dealing solely with records requests to, more a nuisance type based disputes. And so that jurisdiction is expanding, which we've seen over the past 10 years and continue to see. And with those changes to the legislation, we also saw, the implementation of sort of a more formal records request process for owners.
Right.
Mandatory director training, the licensing of condominium managers. There were a whole host of changes that happened in 2017 that, we've now seen, come into play over the past almost decade.
Yeah.
I think another big change that we also saw over the past decade or so is, the very quick transition to going from in-person owners meetings to online meetings.
Yes.
Yeah. So with the pandemic, that quickly changed. Virtual meetings.
That was almost like overnight.
Overnight, it became normalized so quickly. And I think before the pandemic, we weren't really seeing. We weren't doing virtual meetings at all. And so that was another really big change that I think we've seen over the past 9 years or so.
Yeah, and actually, I've got my own AGM coming up, and it is virtual. But I remember pre-COVID, I actually had to go knock on my neighbors' doors to get quorum.
Yes.
Actually, my own directors on the board, I had to knock to get them to come to make quorum. So you're right, they're virtual online, and it kind of leads back into what you were saying at the beginning about how it's the people.
Yes.
So the virtual aspect has made it more efficient and effective for people to have access to data, to their lawyers, their directors. But I think it's removed a bit of the human element, which I've seen yourself, your firm, and other firms kind of bring it back to it's about the people, right?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, as condominium industry professionals, I think our goal is the same. We want to help support and build strong, well-run condominium corporations and communities. And at the end of the day, those communities are comprised of the owners. And so it's about the people, at the end of the day.
It is. And it's funny, not that we forget that, but it's people will look at it and get mired in the business of it and not the people.
And I think also to your point, you were sort of stating that, we try to provide, key takeaways, providing the practical information forward. And I think that's why these panels are so important, because I think it's a really great opportunity for us lawyers on the legal panel specifically to, provide the key takeaways from, in condominium law, from, maybe it's from, legislative amendments or a court decision or a
Right.
CAT decision that, owners, boards, or managers can then take back and apply in the real condo world setting. And so
Absolutely.
I think as lawyers, when we approach these legal panels, as we're preparing, I want to provide key takeaways and practical information that owners, managers, and boards can use in their own condominium communities. And so maybe during these panels, we answer a lingering condo question that you might have, or maybe
Right.
we provide some information that you didn't know you need. As we said, there's a lot to condominiums
So
and
much out there.
operating and managing a condominium. And as you know, the boards are ever changing. And so it's important to get whatever practical information that we have out there. And I think these legal panels are a really great way to do that.
Looking for property management you can truly rely on? At Eastern Ontario Property Management Group, we treat your investment like it's our own. With a team of experienced, licensed condominium managers, we bring the knowledge, dedication, and expertise needed to protect and grow your property's value. From day-to-day operations to long-term planning, EOPMG delivers full-service property management you can count on. Eastern Ontario Property Management Group, maximizing your investment every step of the way.
They absolutely are. And again, we've got a couple of conferences. There's so many conferences all the time. And I always make this joke on this podcast that condo conferences are like Star Trek conventions. People will show up at a hotel, walk in the room and goes, what is going on? I don't understand this. But when you're in it, you're like, I get it. Once you're into it, when you walk into a Star Trek convention or a condo conference, you're all the way in. But we had people coming from Ottawa, from Southern Ontario, from Toronto, the GTA, because of these panels, because of these. So you made a comment about the directors, and it is about the directors because they're elected by their fellow owners. Mm-hmm. It's an equality thing. But it's a fire hose for a new director walking in, right? And we'll put aside all the training and all that, but if you're meeting a new director for the first time, you're the counsel for the board, and they say, Victoria, what do I need to know? What is something you can help direct them to be a great board member that you've seen in your time of providing counsel to a multitude of corporations?
I think that's a really good question. As a starting point, I think a good starting place would be for the director to complete their mandatory director training with the CAO.
Shout out to the CAO.
Yes, shout out to the CAO. I think that's a really good starting point just for the directors to get a sense as to what their duties and obligations are. Of course, as you'll learn through the training, sort of one of the overarching legal duties of a board member is to act in the best interests of the condominium corporation. And so I think just getting a sense as to, what are my responsibilities and duties. I think that's a really good starting point. And then from there, I think get familiar with your condominium.
Right.
Get familiar, read the declaration, read the bylaws, read the rules. I'd even suggest reading maybe the last year or two of the minutes just to get a sense, or board meeting minutes.
Yes, absolutely.
Just to get a sense as to what's going on within your condominium corporation right now. Because I think that will allow you to sort of hit the ground running with these. And then I guess my final point would be to ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions. Again, there is a lot that goes into running or governing a condominium corporation. Right. There are a ton of moving parts. And so ask questions if you're unsure. Ask your fellow board members. Your condominium manager is a valuable source of information.
Absolutely.
And to the extent the board and manager you're unsure of how to deal with the specific situation, then reach out to the condominium professionals, whether that be a lawyer, an engineer, a reserve fund analyst, and so forth, in order to get the information that you need in order to make an informed decision. Jumping in as a brand new board member, you're jumping into the deep end a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so I think you need to give yourself some grace and, ask the questions that you need to in order to, be the best board member that you can.
Absolutely. And to that point, and you've alluded to it, the community isn't just the ownership. The community is the condominium, I say vendors and contractors in the professional sphere, right? You've attended multiple AGMs. You've dealt with legal notices, unfortunate situation with liens, things like that, where that director not only has a fiduciary responsibility, they were elected to make decisions on behalf of the board and the ownership, but they also have a responsibility to themselves to gain that knowledge, right? And that's what you're there for, is to support the board by delivering the services that the ownership wants. And this is something that I always ask, usually after the condo conferences, and we all go for, a nice little glass of warm milk after. I ask these questions many times of the lawyers is, what is something that you find the Condo Act does quite well? And I'm using this as a general. It could be the CAO, the CMRAO, the CAT. What is one thing you found that it does quite well in regards to condominium living? And what is one thing that you think they're still progressing on that could still have improvements on?
So I think something that the Condominium Act does really well is it provides a good and solid governance framework in which condominium corporations can function. That also promotes transparency and accountability. It clearly sets out the responsibilities of the condominium corporation and of owners. It also sets out requirements relating to financial reporting, reserve fund planning, meetings, and so forth. And so I think that helps ensure that condominium corporations across the province are run in a consistent fashion and in an organized way.
Yes.
Something that I think that the Condominium Act could do a bit better, I think, would be with respect to the ability for condominium corporations to hold owners responsible for certain costs.
Sorry, I'm smiling because this is a hot button for me separately from this podcast. So I'm dialed into this part of the conversation 100%.
Yes. So the Condominium Act, of course, clearly sets out certain situations in which a condominium can charge back certain costs to owners. For instance, if insurance deductible, the condominium corporation's insurance deductible in certain circumstances. If the condominium completes repairs on behalf of a unit owner, the condominium can charge back those costs. But there's other situations in which it's less clear.
I like that phrasing, less clear. We'll go, that's the phrase of Friday.
When a condominium can charge back costs to owners. And particularly when there's non-compliance by an owner.
Yes.
That's what I'm ultimately talking about here.
Of course.
When there is an owner that is non-compliant with the condominium's governing documents or the Condominium Act, there are certain situations where the ability of the condominium to charge back the cost it incurs to enforce compliance is less clear, as I had said. And what happens as a result of that is that the other owners, all owners, have to pay for those costs to for the condominium corporation to enforce compliance against the non-compliant owner, which isn't fair in my view.
Yeah. I call it subsidizing other people's decisions.
Yes, and so I think in terms of something that I think the Condominium Act could do a bit better, it would be to better support the condominium corporation's ability to charge back those non-compliant, the costs incurred to enforce non-compliance against owners.
Absolutely, and you just triggered something to me, and I know the phrasing and the language we're speaking in, we refer to the condominium corporation, and some people think that it's this corporation and the owners, it's us against them. But the corporation is the legal entity that the owners are part of. The owners are the corporation because they are the governing documents. When it refers to unit holders, it's them. When it refers to units, it's them. That's just the physical description of the community they live in, right? So it's not the corporation as us against them. It's the corporation as a mechanism to have their community exist and coexist.
Yes, exactly. And I think sometimes people think of like a condominium corporation as like a big bad corporation.
Exactly.
When that's not the case
No.
at all. As you said, like the condominium corporation, it's at the end of the day comprised of owners. It's fully funded by its owners. And so, any cost that a condominium corporation incurs in order to enforce the provisions of the Condominium Act and the condominiums governing documents against, a non-compliant owner, that it can't charge back those costs to the owner. The other owners have to pay for that.
Yes.
At the end of the day. So, I completely agree with you on that front.
Yeah, and to that topic, and I mean, I could sit here and talk condominium law all day and chat with this. But like for our listeners and our viewers, today was to give you guys a snippet of what's happening. What Victoria is seeing is what you're going to see at the legal panel on May 29th, 2026, in Kingston. Again, details on the website. Victoria, any final thoughts for everyone, whether it could be any topic on condominium law, condos, and or the panel, something to share with our viewers and our listeners out there that you kind of want to know. The camera and the floor is yours.
I guess I will touch on the panel, only because I do think, well, actually, I'll maybe more generally just talk about the conference. I think the Kingston conference provides a really great opportunity for board members, managers, and owners to obtain information about the condominium world, which again touches on so many issues. And so I think, not only the legal panel, but all of the panels always provide really great information that's helpful. Again, maybe the attendees, you get a lingering condo question answered, or, again, you might, or maybe, you got a question answered that you didn't know you needed. Or,
Exactly. They're like, I didn't know I needed to know that.
yeah, and so there's such great information that comes from these panels. But beyond that, I think there's also a really great opportunity for owners, managers, and directors to have informal discussions with the condo professional, the condo industry professionals who are present at these meetings. And so if you do have, a specific question or matter that, you just like to get a bit more insight on, you have these condominium industry professionals at your
right there.
fingertips. And so there's a lot of value, yes, in the panels. You're going to get great information.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic.
But you're also going to have an opportunity to speak to these professionals one-on-one. And I think that's incredibly valuable, especially, again, there's so much to know with condominiums generally. There's so many issues at play. And
it's always changing. There's always some tweak of some other legislation. It could be the Residential Tenancy Act. It could be something to do with municipal legislation in a different city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not even just talking about like the lawyers. There's also, yes, there will be, lawyers present at at the conference, but there are also, engineers that are present. There's also, reserve fund analysts, auditors. So if you have questions, or that you're looking for some insight on, like these professionals are
the conversations.
Here. Yeah. And like beyond just the condominium, professionals that are available to you, there's also individuals in similar boats. Like we're all, at the end of the day, everybody attending this conference, everybody has, I think, the same goal. Everybody wants to build and support, strong, well-run condominium corporations.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of power in that.
There absolutely is. And to your point, I love going to conferences. I know it sounds weird, but I enjoy them. But
I do too.
I say to people, some of the greatest parts about conferences are the hallway conversations. Yeah. When you're filling up your cup of coffee. Oh, you're so-and-so. Oh, you're in a high rise too. You're in a townhouse complex. Oh, you're a roof vendor. Well, you know what? We have a flat roof. We have some questions. And then they say, oh, you know what? We just dealt with that. We did a contract and here's DHE over here and here's this engineering firm. It's the hallway conversations. It's the connections that build the condo community. And like
a shout out to Kingston. It's a fantastic city. It's great for tourism. So if you haven't decided yet, check us out. Go down there because it is one of the best conferences ever. I take the whole weekend and go down. It's absolutely amazing. Like I said, I wish we could do this all day. I think this would be a great job for me to have, just to sit here and talk about condos with you guys all day. But thank you so much, Victoria, for taking the time today. We really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you on the panel and, of course, in the hallway conversations, at the booths and that. For everyone, this is another episode of the Condo Pod. Today's episode was talking about the great legal panel we have coming out on May 29th in Kingston with Victoria Crane and a bunch of other amazing condominium lawyers, great law firms in Ontario. Check us out. Check out the podcast. Subscribe on any one of a multitude of different socials and things like that out there for us. And again, thank you, Victoria, for today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'll see you in Kingston.
I'll see you in Kingston. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for tuning into the Condo Pod, your source for all things condo in Eastern Ontario. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and share this podcast with your fellow condo community. For more resources and upcoming events, visit us at ccieasternontario.ca. Until next time, stay informed, stay connected, and keep your community strong.